Hi, welcome to Empty Nest Creations. My name is Wendy. I'm the owner and creator here. Today we're going to be working on some thrift flips for a mini market that I attended this past weekend. And we're going to just jump right into project number 1. So in this project, I just have a wood piece that I'm going to be using to make a piece of art. And I've got this rice paper, decoupage paper that I'm going to be using of an owl. I will have these available on my website. If you're interested in purchasing those, you can go to my website. It's emptynestcreation.com. And I'll have these and some other projects, IOD products on my website as well. And so here what I'm doing is I'm just measuring out where I'm going to be putting the paper so I can paint. I'm going to paint the top and bottom and the outside edges one color, and I'm going to paint where I put the paper with a white color. And I'm sure you've seen other creators do this, but painting that white background just helps the colors and the images on your paper to pop and to stand out. And so just lining this up and getting this tape on here so that I have a good area to paint on. Measuring to make sure that it's all lined up and straight. I usually tend to eyeball things, but my husband always calls me out on things not being straight. And so when I'm selling things, I kind of want to make sure that it looks good. So I'm going to cut the edges of this tape off so I can paint the edges of this board as well. So I'm just using a knife to cut that. And then I'm going to add some tape around those sides on the top just to make sure I don't get any of the green paint on there. So if you like thrift flips and you like DIY projects, I would love it if you would subscribe. If you are already a subscriber, thank you so much. Subscribing is free, and it just helps my channel, and helps YouTube to know what to share out. And so the more views I get and the more subscriptions I get and comments, it just helps my channel to grow. So I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe, and you can click the bell notification and it's going to notify you when I upload new videos. So here I'm using some Fusion paint in the color Carriage House. This is one of my favorite greens. It's a perfect green for fall, and this paint has a primer and a top coat built in. So it's a really nice paint. It self-levels. And so I put 2 coats of this green on, and now I'm removing that tape, and I'm going to use Fusion, another Fusion paint, to just paint the inside box here. And this is where I'll be decoupaging that paper on. And so I'm just cutting in here around the edges so I can quickly paint that center. And I only put 1 coat of this on because it's really just to lighten up that background. And I'm going to use a wet paintbrush to tear the edges of this paper. So I'm tearing the top and bottom off, and then I'm going to line it up and see kind of where I want it, wet those edges and tear the sides. This just gives it a more organic look. You can, of course, cut this if you want to with scissors, or you can decoupage it on and then sand the edges off. And I'm using just some polycrylic here to decoupage this paper down. And so I do start with that starter strip at the top and get that laid down. I do wet this paper. It just helps it to stretch a little and work out the wrinkles as you go. This worked really, really well to decoupage this paper on, and I did go ahead and put a coat of that all over the project. Now here I have some molds And I can't remember the name of this mold, but this is one of the pumpkin molds, and it has these leaves on it. And so I used the magic, the fast setting casting resin here, and had done these leaves, and these I'm going to attach these to the top and bottom. So here I'm just painting them the same color, green, the carriage house that I painted the wood. And here I'm laying them out, seeing how I want them, to go on here. It's kind of like a puzzle. And the bottom, I needed a couple more leaves. So these are just some single leaves that I had. And just kind of getting those in there, and I'm going to paint those as well. Before I attach them, get them painted on all sides. And now I'm just using some of this fast acting glue. I'll put this in the comments below. So I get this off of Amazon. It works really, really well. And it just attaches these pieces down, holds them really well, and it's a quick, like I said, fast drying glue, and it has that activator, which makes it dry almost instantly. And so I just get these on, and then I spray them with that activator, just to make sure that it's on there really well. And so here I'm using some Amy Howard at Home dark wax, and I'm just putting this all over this piece. Now I've already put the polycrylic on the entire piece. So this is just to age it, and kind of blend in with those leaves with the brown and the owl on here. I think this is just, it turns out so pretty. And this wax just gets down into all of the nooks and crannies of those leaves. It gives it a nice aged look. And so here it is, all finished. I think the leaf detail really just adds to this, this little plaque. You can hang this on a wall, or you can, mount it on a tabletop. Now here I just have it leaning on this little cookbook shelf. But I think it turned out really pretty. I love the colors in this, very fall looking. So we're going to move on to project 2. This one's super simple. So I had this little planter box. It was already a blue color, but I'm going to be painting it this blue pine by Fusion. This is a little sampler that I picked up the other day to try out this color. I really like this blue color. It's kind of a bluish gray, and I didn't want this box to be so scuffed up. I wanted it to, have more of a complete finish on it. And we're going to use an inlay on here. And I'm going to be using one of the IOD paint inlays. And this is the one of the ones from Christmas and fall last year that we'll be using. And I failed to turn the camera on when I did this. So I'm using the Gloria package. And I had this little fall wreath. I've already put it on here, and basically you put down a coat of wet paint, you spray your inlay, lay it down, and then spray it again. And I use a paper towel to just press it into the paint. The one thing I did with this one is I kind of fussy cut around the edges of that wreath. I don't like the paint when you can see the paint lines. When your image doesn't cover the whole thing. They call it painting lines. I don't really like that look, and so I was trying to minimize that on this piece. So I cut really close around the edges, and you'll see that when I pull it off. And because of that, it was a little difficult for me to get the edges up. So I'm just using a little mini screwdriver here to just lift that edge so I can begin to pull it up. Trying to be really careful and not scratch up any of the paint. And so I'm just, again, using that tool to get it started. Now here you can see I've got it started. This is probably the best I've ever gotten an inlay to work. This turned out so nice. You want to, lay that inlay flat because you can use it again. And see how good that turned out. And you didn't get any of those lines from the paper laying in the paint. So it turned out really, really nice. And so I'm just using the Waverly top coat here. It's the matte varnish, and I give the whole piece a coat. Now it says it's matte. It does have a little bit of sheen when it dries, so that's why I did the whole container with that varnish. And this just turned out really, really nice. Um, it's a alternative color for fall, but it's kind of got that blue gray look to it, so I think it will work really well with some fall displays. So that was project 2, and now we're going to move on to project number 3. So here I just have, this was a wooden sign. It's a solid piece of wood. It was purchased at Hobby Lobby, and I got it at the thrift store, but I went ahead and sanded all the images off. And now I'm painting this with Country Chic paint in the color Bee's Knees. It's a really pretty buttery yellow color. And I'm going to give this a couple of coats of that paint and get it covered really, really well. This is an all-in-one paint too, so it does have a top coat in it, but it has more of a matte finish. Now I'm using IOD Millot pages here, and I'm using one of the floral designs. And if you've never used a transfer before, these work so well. You just use that stick, rub all over, and begin lifting up that transfer paper. If part of it doesn't adhere down, you just lay your paper down and rub some more. This one went on really, really well. And now I have this little, it's not really a candle holder. I'm not sure what it was, but it's a perfect pedestal for this piece. And then I have a little bird that was a casting that I had done previously, and I'm going to use that. So I'm using some wood glue here, and I'm going to use some of that fast drying glue in conjunction with the wood glue to glue this piece on. So I'm just kind of making sure it's centered using my fingers as a measuring tool. There I go, kind of eyeballing things again. But I glue that on, wiping off the excess there just to make sure that none of that wood glue is seeping out. And now I'm going to work on the little bird. So I'm going to use Fusion paint in the color Casement. And I'm going to give the little bird a coat of this paint. Now it's already white, and this paint is kind of an off-white color. But I always like to paint the resin. It just gives it a nicer finish. And then I'm going to use that same dark wax on the bird, and I'll use it on the entire piece. But this just brings out all the little details in the birds. These IOD molds are very, very detailed. And so you always want to, bring out those details when you're using these pieces. So I'm just wiping that wax on, wiping it off. And, the reason I decided to use this little bird on here is because I just felt like it needed something else in that corner to you kind of balance it out. Now, I didn't need to seal in the paint, but you do need to seal in your inlay. So I'm using that same dark wax going over the entire piece just to seal in that transfer. And now I'm going to glue that little bird on using the activator to just make sure it dries quickly. And the activator did wipe off some of my wax, so I'm going to go back in and just touch that up. And now this piece is finished. I think this turned out really cute. It's a nice little shelf sitter to add to your vignette. And I just think it turned out really, really cute. Looks great with this little pumpkin that I made last year. So let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think about this project? All right, so we're going to move on to project 4. And if you like this content, please consider sharing this video so that your friends can enjoy it as well. Again, I'm using that Country Chic paint in the color Bee's Knees. And I picked up this little bucket at a thrift store for a couple of dollars. And I did give it a good sand. The painting on the front of those apples was raised a little bit. So I sanded the entire piece just to make sure that all of that raised paint was taken off. Here I'm giving it one coat of the bee's knees. And then I'm going to dry that. And then we're going to come back in, and I'm going to use this little sponge dauber to pounce the paint on. This is going to eliminate any brush strokes, and it's also going to, it just gives it a really nice finish. And if there's any of that paint left on there that's raised up a little bit, this is going to help to camouflage that. Now we're going to do another step with this. So I don't think that the apples, if they were still showing, it would have made any difference. But I just like the way this finish looks, especially on a metal piece. It gives it a little bit of texture. And so I'm drying as I turn this piece so that I don't smear the paint. And so that's why I'm drying in between as I go. And I just give this a couple of coats with this pouncer, making sure that I've got everything covered really well. So once that's dry, we're going to use a rice paper. This paper comes from Connie's Lines and Designs, and it's one of the papers that she sells. And I'm just going around and using my finger to mark where that little oval is on this can. And then again, I'm coming back in with that wet paintbrush and just tearing the edges to make it fit within that oval. So once I get it to where it fits, I'm going to wet the rice paper. And again, that just helps the fibers to stretch. And I'm using the polycrylic again, putting down that starter strip, laying the paper down. And this rice paper really doesn't wrinkle a lot, so it's perfect for decoupage. So I'm just finishing up here, putting that bottom coat on, and I'm going to lay it down and then go over the entire thing with this polycrylic, making sure that I've got it adhered really well. And this project is complete. So let me know in the comments below what you think about these projects. I did take these to a mini market this weekend. If you enjoyed it, please remember to give it a thumbs up. Thank you for giving me some of your time. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video.